But this was in my backyard in Washington. Beautiful clematis.
Beautiful.
Mm. You know how I love flowers, so.
Okay, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to
the flag
the United
of
States
the United States of America
to the republic
and to the republic for which it
one
stands,
nation,
one
under
nation,
God,
under God,
with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Ashley, you want to take the roll call?
Mike Hobson,
Here.
Marilyn Early,
Here.
Deborah Nelson,
Here.
John Fanny,
Here.
Jan Schwedding,
Here,
Jessica Stickles,
Here.
Michelle Blythe.
Here.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we'll move right into our first item, which is a development agreement with SmartCap for the 188th development. Mark Hayes.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. So for your consideration this evening is the first of two development agreements. This one would happen to be for the Smart Cap development on 188th. This is our most current development. This development agreement will memorialize the use of traffic impact fees for the 3/4 street improvement of 63rd Avenue. So this will be from the Smart Cap project down to the improvements that were made with the Dan Trawl project on 180th. You'll see by the map that where that alignment goes. Part of this is there's a parcel in between Smart Cap and Dan Trawl owned by Swire Coca-Cola. And Swire is in agreement to building 3/4 street improvements there. So that's a private agreement between both Smart Cap and Swire. So the construction of 63rd Avenue was in the development agreement is just between the city of Arlington and in the Smart Cap development group.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Mark?
yes, I do.
Okay, Deborah and then Jan.
Well, mine is just, I don't know if it's a typo or something that's on the cab, but under subject towards the end where it talks about development agreement, it says a residential townhome project.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. I caught that before, or I caught that just after it got sent out to council, and I went,
Okay.
so yes, I will correct that for the public hearing.
Okay. I didn't think they were doing townhomes, so it's
Oh, this is a manufacturing industrial project.
Yep.
It was, I didn't check my own work. I was doing a cut and paste between the two development agreements. So
all right. You're busted.
shame on me.
All right, Jan.
Okay, I have actually two questions. My first one is it shows where the road goes and you know where the trailer park is. I thought Smart Cap was also building on the east side, and I was curious as to why 63rd wasn't going all the way up to 188th on the Smart Cap property.
So Smart Cap property is bounded, or the mobile home park is bounded by on the west side and on the south side by Smart Cap properties. But the mobile home park actually extends out to 188th. Smart Cap on the west side of the trailer or the mobile home park is on 188th, but it's kind of an L-shaped parcel. And so where they're building the roadway is from there along their eastern boundary.
So what is the construction on the east side of the trailer park that goes all the way up to 188th?
So that is just depicting where we're acquiring right of way along there, because eventually 63rd will extend all the way to 188th.
Mark,
So
I think
this
she's
is,
referring to the HCI steel building process on the east side of the trailer park.
Oh, okay, so Smart Cap isn't on the
Oh.
east side.
No, it's a different development.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yes,
So
yeah,
my-
that's, oh, yes, that's HCI's new building there, correct.
Okay, my second question, within the document itself on 1.5, it specifically states that they will not be required to put in sidewalks, trails, curbsides, or anything. But then in 3.1, it says they are required. So which one's correct?
What number were you on, Jan?
The first one is 1.5, and it specifically states that sidewalks, street lighting, trails, all that was something the city was going to do and that they didn't have to. But then when you look at 3.1, it says that their Smart Cap is required to do the lighting, sidewalks, and curbs.
So the construction they're doing is 3/4. We don't require lighting along this industrial roadway. So what they'll end up doing is they'll end up building curb and gutter, drainage, and 2 lanes of asphalt for their development. When the Baxter parcel develops, or anybody along that eastern side of the 63rd alignment, they will then be required to build the trail section and any other elements of the roadway as part of that development.
Okay, so on 3.1, where it says that the elements of it shall consist of, but not limited to gutters,
gutters,
sidewalks, all that stuff. But that doesn't mean that they have to do it.
That's correct. It's just a laundry list of what elements are in that roadway section.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's move to the next one, Mark.
Okay, so the next one is a development agreement for Corner 9 Properties. This is the developer of the Gilman Walk at Country Charm. And so a couple of things I want to point out on this development agreement. So this kind of goes along, Jan, with the questions you're asking with the document itself. So as part of this development, they will extend Gilman Avenue. And so Gilman Avenue will consist of, we've required besides the normal street improvements, a 12-foot multimodal trail system that runs adjacent to the roadway alignment itself. They will be installing street lighting, sidewalk on one side of the alignment, storm drainage, street trees, all of that. So that's all part of their development at Gilman Walk. One of the other things they're doing here, besides the enhancement of that roadway, is that they're also creating a public parking lot on Tract Q. And so Tract Q is also going to be dedicated to the city of Arlington. So Gilman Avenue will actually come to its terminus in Tract Q, and the public parking lot will be a part of that roadway construction. And then from Tract Q down to the lowlands, there will be a paved access road all the way down the hill, down to the Country Charm Park site.
Is that a walking pathway or a driving pathway?
It will be both. And so we'll have to put a control gate up at the top of the parking lot so we can control vehicular access. It's really designed for people to be able to park at the parking lot and then walk down the paved section. But it also gives us the ability to have the roadway down to the lowlands for maintenance and access to both the park property and the proposed stormwater pond.
Jan and then Michelle.
Okay, by them putting the road down, and I know that been down there, thank you very much, appreciated that. So once that road is there and the pathway and everything, and there's access to Country Charm, does that mean that the city could at some point use Country Charm for large events?
That is correct.
Thank you.
All right, Michelle.
Mark, on that map, I'm kind of looking on the map to see where the road is that goes down to the park. Is that I'm not sure where it's at. Is it designated on that map that you supplied us or not?
It is. I'm trying to scroll down to the map right
Okay.
now. My computer's not cooperating very well here.
I mean,
It looks like you see a very tail end of it at the far side of the park area.
It's a little, you'll see a little white line that kind of goes along the edge of the trees into where the parking lot is. I think that's the road, the access road that goes down a hillside.
Correct. That's all slope in there. And so if you look to well, it actually runs underneath the designation where it says track Q, 1.8 acres. That white line is an existing access trail that goes down to the bottomland. And was from the previous use of the property as a farm. So they used to take their equipment down through there and they'd run the cattle up and down that roadway. So that's the alignment basically of where the paved section will go down the hill. And
Oh,
then
I see.
it'll
Okay.
turn down at the bottom there, turn and come along the east side of that tree line you see.
Yeah.
And then there's a kind of a rectangle there. That's the manure lagoon or the old manure lagoon. So that will be all regraded. That will become the stormwater pond. And so that access road will run along the tree line all the way out to that stormwater pond.
All right. Thank you. We're using an existing road then. I was kind of looking for something new. So thanks.
It will be new.
Or pathway.
It'll be graded, but it'll be along that alignment because
Okay.
that's the only way to get down there on that slope.
All right. Nice. Thank you.
So one thing I do want to point out on this, get back in the development agreement. So at the top of the development agreement, you'll see a designation of both parcels on the assessor's tax parcel numbers. But above that, it'll say property owners. And so Lana Gentry was in negotiations with the property owner who has the little house out on Alcazar itself. And so at that point in time, they had not settled on an agreement for the purchase of that property. They have since done that and purchased the property. So the change on the development agreement will be that Kathy Dion will be listed as one of the property owners in underneath the Grafstras. So that's the change that'll occur with the development agreement when you see it at the public hearing.
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions or comments? Okay, and then July 6th, we'll have the public hearing on this.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you.
So our next item is the bid award to Holt Services for the new water source test wells. Jim Kelly.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and council members. This item before you is for drilling some test wells, 5 test wells, so we can find a future potable water production well. The city's been working on obtaining and securing new water sources over the past several years, and we are now at the time where we're ready to put in some test wells, see if we can develop some wells of good quality, high production, so that we can have some potable water for future growth. We prepared a bid package. We went out to public bid. We received 2 bids. Holt Services is the lowest qualified bidder, and we're recommending that we award contract to Holt Services in the amount of $208,088.79.
Are there any questions for Jim? Jan?
Yeah, just a quick one. I know that they were going to drill some of those down by Howler Park and everything in the river. Is that where vicinity for all 5 of them, or are there going to be someplace else?
We'll be putting 2 wells down at Howler Park where the existing pump house is. We'll be putting 2 wells over in the stormwater wetland, and then we'll be putting 1 well on the north side of the Stillaguamish River.
Okay, thank you.
Deborah? And then Jessica.
Thank you. Jim, remind me, do we have an easement on the north side of the river? Are we paying for land over there? What's happened? I forget what the explanation was before when you told us about this.
We are leasing land over on the north side of the river from CoStar. And it's a small piece of land. It's 12 months. It's a $5,000 lease. And 2 months of drilling, 10 months of just monitoring and testing the groundwater. But we should, you know, we're getting it for 12 months, but we should know everything we need to know if it's going to be a future source within 6 months.
So then say it's a future source, then will that be a large expense to us in the future to have a source of water coming off of leased land rather than our own land?
It's a field, and CoStar would be more than happy to sell us the property. It's a hay field right now.
Okay. So, okay. And then my other question is just kind of thinking the timeline of, so I realize this is a test process, kind of test and research, but what is it, when are you hoping that we will then be ready to say, turn on some of these new wells to help our, you know, fill the need of water in our city? Is there a timeline for that yet?
I would say early 2022. We will be putting out an RFP to increase our water treatment plant capacity, as well as to design and construct new potable water test wells and the piping to bring it to the expanded water treatment plant. That RFP will be going out in September, early October. We should have designs done and permits in by mid to late 2021 and have construction late 2021, work started and water coming from the new wells in 2022.
Okay, thank you.
Jessica?
Yeah, my question was on the budgeted amount of 75,000. What made it come in at almost 3 times that amount?
We budgeted $600,000 for this project. It was a 2-year project. It should have read $75,000 was budgeted for 2020. We budgeted $525,000. We were trying to get all this work done in 2019. However, we only expensed $66,000 of the overall budget. So since we do a cash budgeting for every year, we only had $75,000 available for 2020. So we will have to do an amendment.
So I get confused because you give us dollar amounts based on project rather than broken down based on what the cab is doing. So are you able to get us the actual amount that you budgeted from the project for this piece, or was it just the 75,000?
When we budgeted the project, we wanted to spend, do the well screening report, the drilling, and the geotechnical support in 2019, and we were budgeting $525,000. That $525,000 was included in the 2019 budget. Due to some circumstances, we couldn't expend it. We couldn't move forward with the project, so we did not. All we got done was the screening report. We had a lot of difficulty getting the screening report through the Department of Ecology. So now we're going forward with the rest of the project. The total project is still well under the $600,000 amount that was budgeted for the 2019-2020 biennium.
But are you understanding my question about separating it out?
Um, Can you re-ask that question again?
Yeah.
I didn't understand.
Yeah, because you're noting the project itself was 525 for last year and it didn't get spent, but yet you're here on the cab, it's only noted that 75,000 was budgeted for this part of the project. So what I'm asking is when you have a full-size project that it's being pieced out and you're just bringing us a piece of it, not the whole project, can you give us the budgeted amount that was budgeted for just that piece?
Yes, I can. If you would like, I can update the council agenda bill and put all the information that went into how I derived and came around with the 2019-2020 budget, which was comprised of 3 items: the development of the screening report to get ecology approval, installation of test wells, and then the geological support. So there were 3 major components that went into the project for $600,000 that we budgeted. And I could do a breakdown on the council agenda bill for next for the next council meeting.
That would be great. Yeah, even if we could have them in history, because I know that that's a common thing for public works that you guys, you know, budget for project size. So maybe if in the history you could give us a breakdown of what the full project is based or versus the individual what we're voting on.
Okay. I will have, well, the next item is still part of that large $600,000 project. So I will do it for both council agenda bills.
Perfect, thank you.
Don? And then
Yeah,
Michelle.
Jim, just back to Deborah's original question there too, about the leased land that we're gonna be doing these drilling or testing on and stuff. You say it's a hay field right now, but are we locked into some kind of a price for that land if we do go to buy it? Instead of after we find out there's water there, now the landowner goes, oh, you've got a commodity there that you want. Now our price is going to go up.
No, we do not have an option to buy the land. They have 2 or 3 hay fields right next to each other. So if CoStar doesn't want to sell us, we'll just move 25 feet to the north and we'll go on another piece of property that's owned by somebody else. It'd be in the same hydrogeologic zone, so there shouldn't be any discrepancy by moving it a little bit to the north.
Okay,
I'm just,
Michelle. Oh, go ahead, Don.
I'm just concerned that, like I said before, I says we go in there, we put this money into these test wells, and then all of a sudden, boom, the property owner goes, the price just went double.
We haven't done the lease with CoStar. We can go, the lease hasn't been finalized. We can put a term in the lease where we do have an option to buy within, you know, we leave a 12-month window open after the lease termination. It gives us a 12-month period to buy the property, and for a given amount, we can go back and negotiate that.
Okay.
If you like, Don, we'll go ahead. The lease is still in negotiations with CoStar. We're just about ready to send it over to Mr. Peifel, but we will add that additional term. We'll go back and discuss this with Mr. CoStar.
That might be good to have in the analysis when the 5 wells come in to see, you know, if one of them's pretty close to the other or something. That might be something we want to consider in the overall scenario. That's a good idea. Michelle?
When I was reading this weekend, Jim, I had no idea what sonic drilling was. So I went and researched it, and it's pretty fascinating, actually. So that's what you're going to be doing to 5 different prospective wells. And
that is correct.
And you'll get like 6 months. You said that you should know in 6 months. So in a 6-month period with them doing all that work, it's going to be $75,000.
No, the drilling, the cost for the drilling is $208,000.
Okay.
The 75, we were trying to get all this work done in one cycle in 1 year, 2019. The $75,000 was pushed over into 2020 for any type of remainder work that we needed to have to get permits through ecology or the Department of Health. We're running probably about 8 to 9 months behind schedule right now, but we're going to have to put in that anticipated work for ecology permitting and Department of Health permitting into the 2021 budget.
Okay. So I was looking at that this weekend. I thought, gee, that looks like a pretty good deal, right? If it was at 75, but anyways, okay, thank you.
All right, Deborah?
There we go. Not to, well, within the well on the north side of the river, can you just explain to me the strategy of why we're looking there when it's, you know, not in city limits? It's per property that we're not sure whether we're going to purchase or not. I agree with Dawn. I think it would be good to have it, you know, like the mayor said, in the lease too. But what is the strategy? What kind of caused you or whoever to think about, oh, let's go north?
Well, our well that we have is a 1924 water right, and that water right is issued for water withdrawal on a quarter section. That's your point, your POW, your point of withdrawal. And when they drew the quarter section, Heller Well is in the lower right-hand corner of the quarter section. So most of our area for the point of withdrawal, our permitted area, is in the middle of the river and also on the north side of the river. The two wells that we're putting into the wetland, while they are on land that is owned by the city of Arlington, they are actually out of our permitted point of withdrawal. So if we find that those two wells are productive wells, they're high quality wells, and we want to develop over there, we have to negotiate with ecology for transfer of water rights.
Okay. It's all
Now,
water right then.
it is water rights. And right now we're in the process of transferring the Old Hammer water right, which is a very small water right, 40 acre feet, 150 gallons per minute, so that we could transfer that one over to Haller Well, or have water rights from Haller Well transferred back over to that point source.
Okay. Thank you. That helps. I appreciate that, Jim.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions or comments on this one?
No, I would just say that you always provide such a great education to all of us. So thank you.
So we'll move to the next item, which is related to this, as Jim mentioned, the geotechnical services contract with Pacific Groundwater Group.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and council members. And as Mayor Tolbert mentioned, this is one of the projects. We had basically 3 projects in our new water source: the screening report, the well drilling. We also need to have geotechnical support. We've been working with PG&G, Pacific Groundwater Group, for the screening memo and the siting of these new wells. They're very well qualified to provide the geotechnical support, and they will be on board to do the logging of the drilling from the sonic drilling, as well as being there for the 12-hour pump tests. The 12-hour pump tests will be very critical in determining the hydraulic capacity of the wells. And that's the biggest portion of determining if you're going to have a long-term production well. After we do the hydraulic pump test, we will then do some water quality analysis, and that takes a little bit longer, and then we will be monitoring the wells. Our contract with PG&G will last approximately 6 to 7 months. At the end of that time, they will prepare a final report. We'll present that report to the Department of Ecology and the Department of Health on which wells we want to move forward into developing of a production well. We are recommending that we enter into a contract with Pacific Groundwater Group in the amount of $159,419 to provide geotechnical support for our test well exploration project.
Any questions on this one? Probably not, because I think you asked all your questions on the last one. All right, thank you, Jim. So you have one more item here, which is the construction management contract with KBA for the 204th and 77th Avenue roundabout project.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. This item before you is a request to enter into a contract with KBA to provide construction management services for the 204th Roundabout project. KBA is very experienced. They have been providing construction management services for the city of Arlington on other large projects that we have. And after screening several other applicants, we came to the conclusion that KBA would be the best suited to provide services for this project. They will be sharing an office over at the Public Works Administration office. So we were able to negotiate a very good price, and we were recommending that we contract with KBA in the amount of $183,000.
Any questions or comments on this one? Jessica? And
So
then Deborah.
The timeline has them starting in June. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Nice. Okay, so they've got the closeout by December. So the goal is to have it done by the end of this year.
The project should be done in September, October timeframe and open to traffic. The closeout comes letting the paperwork catch up with the project and letting your paperwork come back from all the state agencies.
Thank you.
Deborah?
That was my question. So thank you, Jessica and Jim.
I have one question, Jim. Are we doing the communication plan with the neighborhood and the surrounding businesses internally?
Yes, we are.
Could you give us a draft of that program when you get it drawn up so that we are aware in case people ask us?
I will put a communication plan together, and I will have a communication plan sent out to the city council and to yourself, Madam Mayor, under a separate email.
Okay, so it looks like once you start with, after these are approved on the 6th, this will begin very rapidly to be completed by September, October. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Was there some discussion too, Jim, about placing some large like reader boards, informational boards down there for the citizens?
They are in production right now.
Okay,
They
great.
were reviewed. They were approved last week, and they went into production. Penway Printing is producing them.
Okay. Any timeline for them to be put up?
Late this week or early next week.
Okay, good, great.
Did you have a last question, Deborah?
I just wanted to tell Jim, congratulations. I read in the newsletter that you have a new civil engineer for transportation, and I was happy to hear that for your team. So congratulations on your new family member there.
Well, thank you very much, Councilman. Thank you very much, Deborah.
We're all happy to hear that. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, which is the resolution to extend the emergency waiver of the utility bill late fees and suspension of the water and sewer shutoffs under the governor's phase 4 reopening. Paul.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this just simply is a resolution that extends our existing resolution, which expires June 30th. This keeps us in alignment with the governor's orders and the state's policy, extending it till July 28th, 2020. We do anticipate that there'll be another one after this that will help with those who are behind on their payments, get them on a payment plan before we implement the shut-offs again.
That, and I just will say that information is also coming from the governor's office as part of his directive has passed what you have to do in a payment plan. So Kristen is putting that together. Marilyn?
Are we notifying each of these people by phone or by mail, or how are we communicating with these people that are delinquent?
We will be contacting them.
By,
The idea is we contact them by phone. Yes.
okay, that's good. I like the personal touch. Do that.
Any other questions or comments, Deborah?
So I'm wondering if, as we call the people and say they're just in very dire straits, then is there the availability to send them to the resource center? Because I know that we've, shared money there to help people in situations like this. Am I thinking correctly that that could be a help?
You are, that is
Yeah,
already happening.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this? Okay, so we'll move to our next item, which is a memorandum of understanding with the IAFF for captain paramedic pay assignment. James Trefi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, and Mr. Ellis. Can you guys hear me okay tonight? I reconfigured my.
Much better. Did you get new speakers?
There was some problems with the settings on my computer, but troubleshot those from last time. So sorry about that. I come before you tonight to present an MOU for your approval at next week's meeting regarding the assignment of captain paramedic pay. During the last contract agreement, we discussed kind of modifications to the existing collective bargaining agreement based on changes in the paramedic training that were taking place with the advent of a school in Snohomish County. This allows for paramedic school candidates to still work some shifts at their local fire department, and instead of being in residence in Seattle during paramedic school, they can remain in their own residence during that time period. But part of that is being able to cover necessary shifts when they are in paramedic school. And part of that, when we do have someone in paramedic school, they're allowed to designate what they call a floating captain position to basically cover and backfill shifts off a three-man crew when one person's gone to paramedic school, to basically offset overtime that would otherwise be caused by captains being off on scheduled vacation or on sick leave or those types of things. Jason Abrahamson was made the first floating captain. He was at the first position on the civil service list after Greg Kuntz's promotion. We did not anticipate needing to get a permanent agreement in place. We're kind of forestalling that until contract negotiations. And then Captain Hillis gave notice and retired this past month in May. I think it's the intent at this point to look at Mr. Abrahamson as the next promoted captain. But in order to be able to do that and codify the permanent rate of pay for that position, we need to modify the pay scale in the collective bargaining agreement to compensate him to maintain his paramedic certification. Currently, all the other captains that we have are firefighter EMTs, but don't possess a paramedic certification. In the collective bargaining agreement, a paramedic is paid 112% of a normal firefighter EMT because of their extra training and skill. In negotiation with the union, consistent with the temporary MOU, we're proposing basically to continue on half of that premium in addition to the normal captain pay for those people that would possess a paramedic certification and promote to the position of captain. They would still have to maintain their paramedic certification, and they could be called upon to perform those duties on a crew. This presents advantages to the employer in terms of potentially offsetting potential backfill overtime if there wasn't a paramedic who happened to be available, and just having a more qualified staff. And so that's what I'm coming before you tonight for. I'm happy to answer any questions.
That's a great explanation, James. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this?
No.
Very thorough explanation.
I'm thankful my speaker worked tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next up is our May financial reports. Kristen.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Start off, talk a little bit about retail tax.
Kristen, can you, I don't know if you can turn your volume up any, it's a little difficult to hear you.
Okay. I'll try to talk louder. Is that better? I have it turned up about 100. I have it turned up as high as it'll go. No?
Good.
Turning you up here too. Can everybody hear her fine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. We'll start off with the sales tax. In May, we are starting to see a little bit of slowing in our sales tax numbers. If you do look at our overall year to date, we are 10% higher than this time last year. But if you break that down and start looking at month to month and looking at May 2019 to May of 2020, we are 6% lower than last year for that month. And just as a reminder, our May revenues are based on our March consumer spending. So when we get our sales tax report at the end of this month, which will be based on April, I am expecting that we'll see a continued decline in our sales tax. So you'll get updated on that in my report, of course, next month. And then in my last report last month, there was a question that came up about our general fund expenditures and how the department budget cuts were kind of impacting that. So I did do a little bit deeper dive and looking at our operating expenses overall, just kind of our routine day-to-day expenditures. We are below the 42% that we would normally allocate to May. That's primarily due to, again, our departments have been doing a good job in cutting back spending on our non-salary items like travel and training. But I do want to point out that we also, at the same time, while we're doing that, we are incurring additional expenditures related to COVID. So when we do want to track the budget, we want to look at the department level. I'm monitoring it on the line item level, because if you look at it overall at the fund level, those COVID expenses, are going to make the budget to actual percent go up a little bit. Those COVID related expenses, we are expecting that those will be reimbursed through the CARES Act funding, but just wanted to point out that those will kind of skew our budget to actual numbers a little bit. But again, monitoring that on a line item basis to make sure we're managing our expenses appropriately for the rest of the year. I did want to point out our social services fund. I had promised to keep you all apprised throughout the year on that. We have nearly depleted almost all of our grant funding for that program. So if we take what we have left available in our grant funding, along with what we have in our fund balance for the social services fund, we have about $7,600 left between now and the end of the year to spend. We have been spending at a higher rate than normal because of COVID. Some of the services have been closed or not fully operational. So we have been providing a lot of those services. So that's why we're spending more rapidly than normal. So I'll just keep you updated on the fund balance for that program. For the lodging tax, most of the 2020 grant awards have chosen to roll over those grants to 2021 and have not submitted for reimbursement. We do have 2 events with pretty large grant awards that haven't made a decision yet because those events will be held later in the year. Right now, looking at the fund balance, if we don't receive any more revenue for the rest of the year, and if those events do come online and do happen and ask for reimbursement for the full grant amount, we will deplete our fund balance in the lodging tax fund. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that, monitoring that, of course, very closely. Right now, revenues are down about 30%, but again, that's a delay like sales tax. So I do expect that our next month numbers will probably be a little bit lower than that.
Has a question.
Kristen, the 2 events that have not canceled yet, I'm assuming that they fall within the phases of restrictions, or are they just waiting to see if we're at phase 4 by the time they occur, or
That's my guess. One of the events normally happens mid to late August, and the other one is a fall event. So my guess is they're waiting to see if we'll be at phase 4 or through phase 4 by the time their event happens.
Thank you.
And then just a couple of other items I wanted to update council on. The city will be issuing an RFP in the next week or 2 for banking services. Our current bank is Opus Bank. We did go through an RFP process back in 2016. We had a 3-year contract with 2 one-year options. So we're in the last year of that. but Opus Bank was recently sold to a bank based out of California. One of the requirements that we have as a municipality is that we're required to bank with a bank that is authorized by the state of Washington. And as of the current date, the bank that just acquired Opus has not filed with the state to allow operating with municipalities. So we will be issuing an RFP a little bit earlier than we normally would be, because we have to, of course, get a bank that's approved through the state of Washington. And then we also have gone through an RFP process, or we had solicited quotes for an online payment service provider. You may recall that we were having some technical issues and having some difficulties for our customers on paying online. So we did some vetting and we found what we think will be a good provider, will enhance services to our customers. And so we just have a couple more things that we need to go through, and we're ready to make that change. So we'll make sure and give our customers a heads up when we start that process. And it'll take about 90 days to get through. So I don't anticipate customers will be seeing any change for the next month or two. And then the last item, the state auditor's office has been in contact with me. It's that time again to go through the audit. They will do a review of 2019. Most of the work will be done remotely. I have a meeting with the auditors next week to kind of talk about what that will look like, since we're operating differently than we have been in the past. I'm hoping to get at least a small scope of work in terms of what statewide issues that they might be focusing on. But I also wanted to give council a heads up. Typically when they arrive on site or when they start their field work, they usually send out some communications. So just be looking for some emails to come from the state auditor's office. And that's a normal thing that they do through the audit process.
Great, thank you, Kristen. Does anybody have any questions for Kristen on the financial statements? Is the auditor's office holding, for their entrance to the, are they doing it via electronic now?
Yes, I'm assuming, we haven't gone to that much detail yet, but I'm assuming it'll be all virtual meetings.
This will be your first audit with no auditors actually on site.
Yes, it's going to be unusual for sure.
Okay, thank you. No questions for Kristen? Okay, thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Thanks for turning the volume up, Joni. It's appreciated. Okay, so on the mayor's report, I'm just going to pass on to you something that, some communication I got just shortly before I came into the meeting, just to keep you all aware. I'm coming out of the Department of Health, but our numbers of coronavirus in Snohomish County are increasing. And there was a big spike over the weekend of cases. So they didn't happen over the weekend, obviously happened before that. And that could jeopardize the ability to file that phase 3 application on June 26th. So as you talk to people, just be cautious and do the right thing so we can get there. Okay, there are no public comments this evening, so I'll go to comments from the council members. Are there any comments from the council members? Jessica? No?
Sorry, council report.
Council report, okay. And then so Jessica, and then we'll go to Mike.
You want me to do a council report now?
Sure.
Okay. So I just real briefly wanted to thank the police department. We had our public safety liaison meeting this last week, and I was asking the chief about how it went for him with the Peace March. And I said I was really glad to see him there. And he was pretty much the only one that I saw like in the crowd. I mean, definitely saw other officers off to the side, but he let us know about how many levels of actual protection they had for us there that we didn't see. that there were undercover police officers in the crowd, and that they were all keeping an eye on whether there were any open carriers just for perception, and they didn't find any. And they were in constant contact with the people on the sides, the outskirts of the event. I don't know if you guys saw the drone. That was the police department was using that so that they didn't have to have massive officers in uniforms along the way. They wanted to really give it a peaceful feel. So they had public works, you know, working the intersections instead of police officers. So they just did a lot of steps to really make this pull off well, and still made sure that there was public safety really embedded in it. So I wanted to congratulate them and thank them.
Thank you. I'll echo that too. And I thought the speakers that they lined up for that event were fantastic. They really had great stories to tell and stories that we should all hear. I appreciated that. Mike, you were next.
Yeah, I just wanted to, as I understand it, on July 6th, we're going to be following up with the, following up on the resolution that we passed last week concerning police, and that I guess that's 2 weeks from now, but I just want to just ask that if any council members have any anything that they prepared or are preparing when we talk about different things involving the policy manual, for instance, that I'd sure like it if they would send it out to us so that we could review it before that meeting. I know I have something that I plan to send out, just like Councilor Stickles did with the resolution itself, that I have something I'd like to send out prior to the meeting. And I'd like to receive things if any other councilors have anything in mind to talk about, or policy changes they'd like to see, or things like that. So that's just a request that I have for the rest of the council.
And I'll just remind the council, the way that we're going to do this on July 6th is a great opportunity for not only all of us, but for the public too, is that we're just going to do a deep kind of an education session, a deep dive into how we hire and train officers and what requirements they need to go through, and how we set policies and how we do in discipline and investigations within the department. So you guys are probably getting questions about that as well. So this will be an opportunity to encourage the public to listen in and to see. I think we're ahead of the game here in my dive into how we're doing community policing here in Arlington. And I feel there's a lot of other departments that could really take lessons from our chief and our officers. So I hope everybody will enjoy learning that. Michelle?
So am I off base then on this? Like what I had in mind would be what you've just described, but also that was the chance for the council to offer their thoughts on this, or is this strictly going to be the police instructing us as to what they do, or in other words, I'm looking for an opportunity to provide feedback, and I just don't know what the situation is going to be on July 6th. If that's the time, or it's going to be another time. I'm just confused right now.
I suspect that'll be up to you individually. I would imagine if it was me, I would want to hear what we're doing first, because I think there are probably things into the details, how we operate, that might not be at the top of your mind, or things you know well if you haven't been a public safety liaison. So that'll be up to individual council members, Mike. Michelle?
Okay.
I have two things. First of all, Barb, I really enjoyed your letter in our weekly newsletter, the Arlington newsletter, regarding the police. And I think it was a nice picture and a nice view of the respect that we do have for our community. And our community may be different than other communities, and obviously it is. So I really enjoyed reading that, and it made me proud to read that. So thank you. And then two, I'm actually reading the police manual right now. I started it several days ago. It's 565 pages long. And I think it's really important that we're all aware of, oh my gosh, there are so many things to consider when hiring a police officer, and the steps. And, Chief Ventura gets involved with so many different situations that happen. I thought it was interesting from every aspect at different levels that happen when there's an incident in the field, whether it's a complaint or a shooting or whatever it might be. I felt really comfortable with all of the steps that are currently mandated in our policy that protect everybody. So I think it's important to know all that. And I wouldn't be able to speak on anything or contribute if I didn't know what the current policies in the manual were, and what all of our police officers go through. So thought that was, I don't know, it's a long book. It's just like reading a novel, I guess. No romance, but a lot of information and education. So that's it for me.
That's good. And I will say that, you know, I was really, I don't know how many of you got to attend the Peace March. I know I saw Jessica and Jan, but everybody was masked. So you may have been there and we just didn't recognize you. But it was really gratifying that no one spoke out against our police officers or having faced discrimination or unjust practices from our local officers. There was, you know, a lot of areas I think in the community where we can improve, and we heard that from the speakers. But I was really kind of a point of pride that it wasn't with our peace officers. So. Anybody else have anything this evening?
One of the things that I've been hearing and seeing a lot, even on the social media field, is there's been a lot of talk from the public of people trying to do away with our resource officer in the schools, which, boy, I sure would hate to see that happen for all the good that they have done. But there's been a lot of negative comments because of what's happening in the world today, that people are wanting to remove the resource officer.
I hope they take the time to talk to some school counselors and some teachers and principals at the school who have nothing but the utmost respect for the school resource officers and how they actually help them engage with families where help is needed. So.
Exactly. Yeah, and I even throw in, if we could get some of the past students that have been helped by these resource officers, that would be the greatest thing I think we could do.
I don't always think social media is the best barometer.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
And those the police officers in the schools, it's so amazing because they build that bridge for
exactly.
the younger generation, and I think they're invaluable to have in there. So I agree with you, Dawn.
But I would clarify that that is a decision that the school board and the school superintendent makes. I understand that they were discussing that at their meeting this evening, because that contract is up for renewal. But I think that's part of community policing, which we have intentionally turned to here, is building that trust and that camaraderie with our community, so that not only are officers safer in trying to protect the community, but so are our citizens.
Exactly.
Anything else? I hope our police officers are listening this evening. They're getting some well-deserved love from the council.
They are very much appreciated.
Well, we do appreciate the police very much, and I hope that no one gets the impression that I don't. But I've also read the police manual, and I was going to bring this up later, but since other people have made comments, I just want to point out one thing that I think is something that we might want to take a look at, and that is, of all the things that are listed in our police manual, when it comes to use of force, which is the area, and accountability, which is the two areas that I wanted to look at, because that's what's been in the news. That seems to be the major issue of the day. And that is that we have lots of things, lots of policies, and, you know, they're good. I think some of them could be improved, but they're very good and everything. But nowhere did I see anything about accountability. And by accountability, I mean, if an officer, we have different organizations, SMART and the review board, that go through and they take a look and see if the officer charged has violated one or the other, you know, of the violations of the policies for use of force. And so once they have made that decision, then there is nothing that's a follow-up to that. Like a suspension, or, you know, something that if the officer has violated a policy, I don't see anything in the policy manual that says that there will be any kind of accountability in that regard. And this is something I think that's those are the kinds of things that I think that we need to look at so we avoid having incidences like we've seen around the country. And anyway, that's just my input. I was going to wait till the July 6th to even begin to talk about this, but you know, in that there have been other comments, I wanted just to bring that up. I'm not criticizing the police. I want to support the police, but I do think there's some areas that we could address that would really help the situation with a good amount of the public, a good
I
number
think
of.
you might be surprised, Mike, because I'll tell you, as I've been mayor, I have personally signed the papers to suspend employees for conduct, including in the police department. So I'm really looking forward to learning the processes on July 6th, because it might answer a lot of your questions.
I'm looking forward to July 6th.
Michelle?
I saw, and I'm not done yet, but I saw quite a few areas that addressed accountability and how issues, I guess I'll call them, are reviewed by boards that consist of a variety of different people, not all in the police department. And then the next steps after that. And I got a sense that there was accountability, and especially with Chief Ventura being so much involved, not on the board, but as later on, I felt like there were definitely steps in there of what I read so far. So anyways.
Okay.
I think that's it.
So nothing on the consent agenda?
Oh, thank you for reminding me. What are things on the agenda that the council would like to see on the consent agenda July 6th, if any? And the first two items will be public meeting items, so they cannot move to a consent agenda.
The
think
one
since-
thing, what I was going to say was 7.
Anybody disagree? Okay. Anything else? No? All right.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Question?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good evening. Go enjoy the sunshine.
Well,